the elders, past, present and emerging. Today with us we have David with us from GMDR Group to present us on kind of the business processes within our organisations that need to change to adapt to digital metering. So we'll have them present to us first, and then after that we'll go into workshop meeting with which Kevin will help run, and from that we'll then go into general business. So I'll now hand over to David to take us through his presentation.
David, just before you start, sorry to interrupt, I just want to let everyone know that if you've got any questions, I've just posted a Menti board that you can add your questions to with the code, which is www.menti.com, and the code to enter is 5481281. And if you wish to post your questions on there, and if it's a question that someone else has already asked, you can just hit the like button on that one and it'll push it up the agenda as well. So I'll just keep posting that throughout the presentation. Thanks, David. Sorry to interrupt. You're on mute.
I keep doing that. I was just saying it's in the chat section, which is really handy in terms of it being a reference. All right, thank you. Let me just share my screen. So the other thing is, how do we go about providing you a copy of our presentation? So I forward that to you at the end, Alyssa?
Yes, please. That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, and I'll post that with the recording on our Knowledge Hub as well for everyone.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will be presenting today on the impact on business processes within your organisation as a result of installing digital meters. Our aim today is to provide all of you with an appreciation of the complexity and the reach of new business processes and the changes to your current BAU business processes as a result of implementing digital metering and then being able to realise the benefits associated with that digital transformation. But before we launch into the rest of our presentation, let me just give you a really quick intro. We're a specialist operations consultancy and contracting team. We only work in the water and energy utility industries. We've got experience and expertise and capacity in networks, regulation, retail and metering operations. Over the last few years, we've also gained experience in transformation business process development, in particular with smart or digital metering in the electricity space and now in the water space. We've also got experience in system business process and operational review and redesign. So that's who we are, and that's why we're talking to you about business processes. As we take you through our presentation, there are a few things to keep in mind. The first one is that our presentation is agnostic of meter brand and technology. So what that means is we're not going to talk about any specific brand of meter or any integration technology type. We're not going to talk about specific communication or data platforms or brands. The other thing too, while I'm talking about what's not covered, is that we won't be touching on or talking about any business case parameters associated with digital metering. So we won't cover cost benefit analysis and so forth. Our presentation assumes three key assumptions. There are three key assumptions. And the first one is that the water company has decided to implement digital metering in a comprehensive manner so as to be able to fully realise the transformation benefit. The second one is that the meter device communication infrastructure is in place, or thirdly, that the decision on that communication infrastructure and how it is to be implemented is in place. So they're the main assumptions going through there, and we're meter brand and technology agnostic in terms of what we're presenting. Our presentation is going to cover these 6 main areas. The first one is digital metering touchpoints. That is the key business areas that are going to be impacted as a result of implementing digital meters. The next one is what we call the digital multiplex effect. That is the flow-on effect of on changing business processes, BAU business processes, as a result of implementing digital metering. And we'll be looking at two specific scenarios: read to billing and leaks to continuous flow. The next area we'll be looking at is realizing automation benefits through business processes. And again, we'll be exploring two specific scenarios: high consumption notifications and self-monitoring consumption. So that's the consumer doing the self-monitoring of their consumption. The next area we'll be looking at is impact on organizational roles. And the specific scenario we'll be examining is meter faults. We'll finish our presentation with a summary of key takeout messages. And then finally, we would like to highlight how our team may be able to assist your team with its digital metering journey. So at this point now, I'm going to hand you over to Joanne Rankin from our team, who will talk to you about digital metering touchpoints. Thanks, Jo. Jo?
There you go. That's probably a little bit later. I'm actually sitting next to someone else in the room, so just wait till they unmute. That's a bit better. Yeah, great. I was just saying I can recognise some of the names in front of me, but then there's a few that drift off, and it's just plus more and more. So hello, anybody who knows me. Good to see you. All right, I'm going to kick off the presentation by looking at the impact of digital transformation on an organisation. So the boxes that we have in front of us across the top, the blue ones, are parts of an organisation. So just generic names. So we'll have a governance area, a customer service and engagement area, service delivery, corporate services, and strategy and regulation. The thing that we're wanting to show is the impact of digital meters on these core business areas and business as usual areas. The first part is just an example of, the touch points that are hit in the grey area. They're each of the functions that we're doing, each of the processes, and the touch points will hit billing and customer engagement, network operations and monitoring, asset management, and field services and works management. I guess the biggest point I want you to see is the grey areas underneath each of the organisation chart areas are mostly colour coded to show whether it's impacting the processes that we do today or brand new processes. So of the processes that we do today, the yellow ones are being touched, the white one is not impacted, and all the orange ones are brand new processes. So you can see straight away the impact of BAU areas by just bringing in the digital metering. I think that's probably all we need to say about that slide. So move on. But the conclusion is that there's a massive change to large parts of your organisation. The next thing I want to talk about is what I like to call the multiplex effect. So multiplex is a word that I use to talk about multiple areas, and it's very complex. That's what happens when you try and transition from your business that has not got digital meters to including digital meters. The example that I'm using is the leak process. So what we have in front of us is the normal process when we find out about leaks at the moment. So at the moment, we would mostly find out about a leak because a customer has called us in saying that they have a high bill inquiry, or the plumber or the customer has found that they've got a leak at their site and they're contacting us to say, I'm expecting I'm going to have a high bill. At this point, there's an investigation and possibly some concession towards the leak costs. At the moment, without digital meters, we're waiting for the customer to call us. Now, I've used this example because if we were to think that rolling out digital meters is simply changing all processes where we used to have a analog or mechanical meter and just kind of, you know, pushing a digital meter in there, then I guess the point that we want to bring is that a whole lot of things change when we bring in the digital meters. This process is very reactive, and with the digital meters will be proactive. So data and alarms from the digital meter provide information to show that there's a continuous flow at the premises. We've never had that sort of information before. I want you to cast your eye around this wheel. So we'll get that data coming in from the meter in the centre there. So if we're going to start writing some processes to be able to cope with the digital meters and take advantage of the digital meter data, then this is the way we'd approach it. Everything has changed because we've now got information ahead of a leak. So all of these processes are happening before we would even talk to the customer and discuss concessions for leaks. The new leak processes touch so many different areas, and mostly you're going to have to make decisions as we go. So if around the outside of this wheel, you'll see the types of things that need to be considered. So when I've written the word policy, it's like a business decision has to be made. So the business has to decide, what are we going to do? So for new processes, we've got a continuous flow. Yay, we've got a continuous flow. When are we going to take action? So our policy, so a business decision at that point is, well, we're going to do it when it's X litres, when it's been running for X hours, when it's been running for X days, like what are those thresholds? And then we're going to have systems that can manage that. And then as we go to the right on the wheel, the next thing we have to go is, what is the supportive data for that? So again, what are the systems and processes that help us understand what's happening? So for example, this could be a commercial site, and it might be a manufacturer who's using a lot of water, and so the normal profile at this place might be continuous water running anyway. So we need some supportive data in a lot of cases to be able to feed into our processes. Then as we move around the wheel, we go, well, how are we going to action that? We're going to call the customer, we're going to text the customer. Are we going to allow the customer to just find out about this? Are we going to send them a letter? Well, that could be too late if it's going to take 7 days. So how are we going to do it? So again, what's our policy, what systems and what processes? And then who are we going to contact? So we think about, well, who are the entities at that site? We've got owner occupiers, we've got tenants, we've got landlords, thank you. We've got landlords. We've also got commercial. We've got special customers. So who is it that we're going to contact, and is it different for the different sorts of customers? So we then work out our policy and our systems and our processes, and we put that in place. We've also got to look at regulation. So this one kicks in all the privacy issues. Who's actually allowed to know about this leak at this place? So as you can see, it's becoming very complex. So we've gone 4 steps in the wheel, and we said, okay, well, we've got that process, we've got the systems, and then we might ask the question of, well, what might we do different if we've got different sorts of customers? So our special customers could be hardship customers. We could have dialysis customers, life support customers, you might call them in your area. What do we do differently? And we've got to go around the wheel again when we consider those customers. Perhaps we contact them in a different way. Perhaps we contact them earlier when there's a lower leak. And then the next step in the wheel is, and what happens when things change at that site? So let's say a customer's been being advised about a leak and has decided to do nothing about it. Well, as soon as a new person moves in, we perhaps want to start sending some notifications at that point. So you can see a very simple leak process in the past, which was very reactive, now has all of these steps at the front. You go once around the wheel for normal situations, and then again and again and again, depending on the types of customers and what's going on at the site. we'll move on to the next one. So I've got a similar example here with a different process. So this is the read to bill process. So the current process is that we would schedule a read request, we'd obtain a face read, we'd load that into the billing system, and we'd manage the no read issues. Things change when we go digital. So I'll just go digital. Thanks, David. So with digital, we've got to consider many things, and I'm not necessarily going to go around the wheel with this one. I'm just going to have a look at the wheel as I talk through the considerations. We've got to consider which read parameters to use for billing. So we'll have things like cumulative read or interval reads, or we may have register reads. Which ones are we going to use for billing? Where, how, and whether to store the data. So we're getting all that data, we're going to need to store it. So what are our systems going to do for that? How are we going to validate the reads? Are we doing that on the way in or just at billing time? What about, so that's a normal bill to read. What has to look different on a bill if it's a digital read? Is there something different that you want to add to the bill? That's the normal part of the wheel. And then we start adding in some different things that make us go around the wheel a second time. So special reads, when we have move in and outs, we're going to have to inject a special read, digital read into that process. So very complex. We've also got, change the bill interval, and we might like to take the opportunity to go a little further now that we have something beyond our current business as usual offering. So we may want to consider additional things because we have digital meters. So it might be we offer monthly billing or even scheduled billing. So different processes, very complex. And I think I'll hand over to Penny now.
Hello, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Penny. I'm going to talk about other parts of the business can be transformed by having access to digital data. Now that the meters are able to tell us such things as continuous flow, other alarms such as empty pipe, tamper, irregular register reads, and even giving us the interval data, there's lots of stuff that downstream that information can be used. So we need to consider how we want to use it. Do we want to give direct notifications to customers? Do we want to do workflow so that if a situation arises and we think the meter needs replacing, we can automatically manage a meter exchange request? Or if we think there's a network issue, do we automatically send that information to the network team for them to have a look at? Do we interface everything with systems such as the SCADA systems, not just look at the meters in isolation? So there's a whole lot of stuff that the business can look at downstream once they have that access to that information, and they need to make decisions about what they would like to do with it, and when they would like to know about certain events happening. They may not want to see every single alarm raised by every single meter, but if 200 meters in a particular location are presenting the same information, that could be of concern. We'll actually look at two scenarios where we can make use of that data. The first one being the high consumption notification. So if we go to the next screen. So now that we have the usage data there, and we are starting to collect historical usage data as well, we may be able to implement notifying the customer of high usage before they receive their next bill. It's a bit like a continuous flow, where currently the customers are contacting us when they receive their bill. It's just determined that they could have a continuous flow. Again, high consumption, they're receiving their bills, they contact us and query about it. Is the meter working properly? I don't believe this, or whatever the situation is. Now with digital data, we can upfront say, your usage pattern appears to have changed over the last period. but we need to work out what that last period is and what we're going to compare it against. Do we compare it against their last previous bill, or do we go back when we have the data, go back 12 months and look at their usage from 12 months ago? Do we compare them against similar households, properties? Do we have that information? Do we use that as one of the comparisons to say you're above the average, above the normal? We just wanting to let you know that that's the case. So things like defining the thresholds and the business rules of what that high consumption actually looks like, when it should kick in, has to be worked out and analysed against historical usage and those thresholds. And the other side of it is working out how we want to notify those customers. Do we want to send them emails, SMS, letters? In what circumstance? Again, similar to what Joe was talking about. Our special customers, we may have a different method of contacting them, preference for contacting them. What are the privacy rules around contacting customers, providing this information? Who do we contact? Is it the landlord? Is it the tenant? Is it the owner-occupier? Is it the tenant on a commercial non-res situation? So all of those scenarios have to be worked through and rules set in place for defining who we contact. And the other side of it is said, what method do we want to use? Do we want to do an outbound call? Do we want to SMS them? Do we want to email them? Do we want to send a letter? So again, all that, depending on their high usage amount, maybe it changes. If it's extremely high, we might want to do an outbound call. If it's 10% higher than their normal one, or whatever the threshold is, then maybe we'll resort to SMS. So again, there's all those considerations, and then setting up the systems to be able to put those thresholds and rules in place, actually implementing the thresholds, the workflow, etc. Because ideally we want that to be system generated, not a manual thing. We don't want the business to have to do all that unless it's an outbound call. On the other side is the customer self-monitoring consumption. So we want to set up the customer has access to all this data as well. So they have access to their usage data. How do we want to present that usage data to them? Do we want to present it in a hourly, daily, weekly, monthly? What time spans do we want to be available for the customer? What other information, such as do we want to show them that they've got continuous flow, or when they may have had continuous flow? And there's other rules around that too, as who has access to that actual data. Again, tenants have access to their own data, landlord doesn't. A previous occupier of a premise should be able to have access to the data that is valid for while they were in occupation of that property. So you've got to work out all those type of rules again as to when a particular portal or customer has access to what data. And then to help them with their self-monitoring consumption, do you want to set up things like bill alerts or threshold alerts, usage alerts, and let the customer define what those limits are? So a customer might say, I want to be alerted when my usage is more than 5 kilolitres above my normal usage in any 1 week. Things like that. So do you want to allow that type of interaction? And how do you manage that type of interaction? And then the back end is, how do you respond to that type of interaction, alerting the customer when that situation occurs? So there's all those considerations working through the processes, the requirements, and ultimately the system, the changes to the systems that need to accommodate that. This is just showing how there's such a broad range of considerations that you have to take into account when you just think, oh, we'll give the customer access to their data, but why not give them the tools to be able to manage their data themselves and not relying on us informing them all the time. We do have customers out there that want to be able to do that, And the final bits of this story is that the customers might even want to capture what type of water appliances they may have. If they've got a pool, if they've got their washing machine, dishwasher, those type of ones, and you may be able to work out usage patterns from those appliances and work out again when thresholds may be applicable. So there's all those considerations to take into consideration when you're thinking about, well, what can we do with the data? What do you think the customer would like to be able to do with their data? And what benefits would the customer like to be able to get from their data? Okay, I think that's it. Jo again.
Thanks, Penny. So some good examples of making the most of the data that we now have available with digital meters. Okay, on this in section 4, this almost final section, the purpose of this slide is to convey to you the idea that not only do processes change as a result of digital metering, but there's also changes to roles and probably also the organisation structure. So things change with digital meters. So again, just want to make the point of we don't just change the word where it was analog or mechanical to digital and think everything's going to be just exactly the same. It's not. Things change. So the example I'm using, the scenario that I'm using, is to illustrate the impact just on meter faults. So today it's quite easy to determine who in the organisation is responsible for responding to a meter fault and how the issue is resolved. So the example here, the first one there is there's an accuracy concern and it's raised and a meter test is requested. We know that we usually do that. The metering field services team replace the faulty meter and test the meter of concern. A damaged meter is reported today, and if it's just the meter that's the problem, then the meter field services group are dispatched. If the faulty meter is associated with a plumbing fault as well, then possibly the plumbing field crew attends. But either way, the meter is removed and replaced with a new meter. But with digital meters, the faults, issues and responsibilities are blurred and they're new. There's some new things that are happening. So who responds when the meter doesn't activate? Is it a meter problem? Is it a meter communication problem? Is it a telco services problem? Is the data platform not working? Or is it even a firmware problem within the meter? So how do we triage these jobs? Who investigates first? How do we hand off to another group for further investigation? Maybe we do some cross training. Maybe we, what used to in the past be a totally field function now becomes part desktop, part field. Maybe plumbers are doing some more comms stuff and metering stuff. So there's all these blurred lines now that are happening, and we need to have new processes, but also roles are changing. We also may place things in different parts of the organisation. So a function which has historically been in one area might be moved into another because it sits better when we're responding to the digital fleet that we might have out there. This is just one scenario. I've just picked metering faults, and it's the same kind of thing across many parts of the organisation. So again, it's not just let's just swap analog and mechanical for digital and think everything stays the same. It doesn't. It's going to affect not only your processes, your systems, it's going to be your data, it's going to be who is doing something and has their job changed to support it. So over to David for the wrap up.
Thanks, Joanne and Penny. We've got a couple of slides left.
We
so
can't hear you, David.
You can't hear me. Why can't you hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you, David.
Thanks. Can you see me as well?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Jo and Penny. I'm hoping that we've only touched the tip of the iceberg with regard to touch points and to business processes and the impact of digitisation through metering. And obviously this also extends to IoT devices, network devices and so forth. So, you know, a key takeout message is that digital metering is so much more complex and so much more involved than just the metering exchange program, especially if you're trying to target some of those digital transformation benefits that Joe and Penny have highlighted. The other takeout that we're hoping that our presentation's highlighted is the significant number of core business processes that are going to be impacted. And over and above that, that new processes will need to be developed. So we find that a really good starting point for the organisations that haven't completely started or embarked on their digital metering journey is to start with your current position. So, you know, documenting business processes, BAU business processes. So if they're not up to scratch, now's a really good time to start before you even start planning that future roadmap with your digitisation of metering and other areas. The next takeout is it's quite likely that your system solutions that are going to be put in place will have more interfaces than currently exist as a result of digital metering. So this particularly presents a challenge for IT operations. It's more complex, there's more touch points, there's more interfaces. The way the business processes impact systems as a result of those additional scenarios working through them is going to impact interfaces and the way the systems are configured. The next takeout message is one that we can't emphasize enough in terms of its importance, and that is collaboration between the business operational teams and the IT digital teams. So business process champions will need to be created and they will need to work very, very closely with their IT digital colleagues. This is really important if you really want to get the most out of your transformation roadmap and digital metering. The next thing is also just as important. As you start going down, and whether it's a pilot trial or core competence test in terms of rolling out digital meters, you need to take into account that it will be done in tandem with your current BAU processes. This increases the level of complex coordination and planning to ensure things don't fall through the gaps as you start to increase and ramp up your exchange programs. You'll have two systems running in tandem: your new digital metering systems and all those processes and your existing BAU. It just makes things a little bit more complicated. The last takeout message is just as important. As Joe highlighted with her previous slide on the impact on meter faults, roles are going to change within your organisation as a result of digital metering. And these will need to be managed carefully. So we just, again, change management's the key. It needs to be part of all your program considerations and looking after your staff, as well as having new roles that are going to be created. It's really, really important that they're addressed in order to ensure the success of your digital metering programs. One slide left. Assuming I can get, there we go. Look, what we'd like to do is highlight how our team may be able to assist your team with its digital metering journey. We have experience, expertise, capacity in digital metering business processes. Hopefully we've highlighted that with this presentation. We can assist you with new and impacted operational processes. We have resources that can help you with your project management, planning and coordination, and we've also got experience in procurement and logistics. So if there's anything in this presentation pack that's aroused your curiosity or your interest, or there are burning questions that you have, I think we may have a little bit of time now for some questions. Any which way, we would be delighted to talk with your team. The final slide on this has got Penny, Joe's and my contact details. So we would urge you, don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or need any clarifications. So at this point, I might just hand over to Jacinta. Do we have time for questions, Jacinta?
Hello, David. Yes, we have time for questions.
I will stop sharing my screen. There we go. Perfect.
Can you see the Menti questions, Jacinta?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get them up so I can see them properly. At the moment,
I can
they're on-
share if you'd like.
There we go. So one of the questions we've got is, have you mapped what benefits you can help realise from the current list of identified benefits in the digital metering space?
Read the question again. Was it mapping the benefits?
So have you basically mapped or identified what benefits you can help realise within the organisation of those that have already been identified as digital metering?
The quick answer to that is we can help with all of them that we've identified, because it's all about the business processes and working through those scenarios and then translating them into tangible mechanisms within your organisation. Does that make sense?
I think so. Other question we have is, will GMDR help with the setting of targets or trigger points that was kind of talked about with quite a lot of the different settings in terms of, or will you just identify the need for them?
Okay, so one of the things, and a little bit of a sales pitch here, that we distinguish ourselves with is we roll up the sleeves and we get in there and we do it. Case in point, Joe and Penny are currently assisting Southeast Water. So we're not your typical consultants. We actually will work side by side with your team and undertake a lot of the tasks. So whether it's through mentoring or actually doing the things themselves. So we would help with the data analysis. We would help with the cut and dice, work out what the thresholds might be, and then even start mapping out what the different thresholds impact would be on systems, on your call center resources, and all those sorts of things. So it's not just we'll identify and over to you. You go and work it out. We will help you work it out and actually be part of your team to do that. So we'll work side by side with you.
So in Victoria, there's been a few joint working group initiatives. That's better. Sorry, I had an echo. Joint working group initiatives where they're sharing some information on thresholds. So there are some already industry thresholds out there and some discussions that are going, but it often depends on what is the profile of your customer and what thresholds do you want to set things at. So having good analysis of what you've currently got, or sometimes actually having to delay making a decision on those thresholds until you've seen how things are actually panning out. You've got to get some data to actually then do some analysis. So that's why when David's saying we can get in there and help you, sometimes we really just have to look at your data and your situation to see if you're a little bit different to the industry or not.
Lovely, thank you. Daniel, you've got a question?
Yeah, I do, and yeah, it just makes sense why Penny and Joe seem so familiar. Yeah, I think my question is around, GMDR has done a great job with Southeast Water, and I can testify to everything that's been presented today. But I think my question's around, we haven't really spoken about this enough, but, all these new processes, new roles that are identified, does GMDR also advise on what kind of additional human resources would be needed to support a program that, like Southeast Water going full scale? Do you guys also do that, where you look at the data, look at all the new processes that have been created and say, yep, this team is going to need these many more people? Because at the moment, that's what we're kind of struggling with in justifying that to our general managers, going, hey, the operations control center might need 5 additional resources, but why is, yeah, it's a bit difficult. So coming from you guys, it'll just be independent and third party, I suppose.
We have been involved in the past.
So
Go Joe.
Yeah, so we can help with speculating and doing some assumptions based on some data that you have in the past for how long things take to address. You know, if you're doing a piece of analysis, Daniel, and it's a 5-minute job, then we really just multiply things out. I mean, you've got to do some grunge work to work some things out sometimes. It's not just, let's say maybe it's 2 people. We actually work out what are the key things that they would be doing and estimate about how long something takes and what component of an FTE that is. What's got to be remembered is that we've got to continue doing the business as usual stuff as well. So are you going to have someone cross-skilled with the new stuff as well as the old, or are you going to have a separate team? And have we got enough for that person to, can you actually deal with a half a person? And some organisations are really happy to have someone working half a day each day, and that meets their model. Others are, no, we want only FTEs working 5 days a week, and so we've got to work it out that way. So look, it can all be done, but it's not a wave of a wand. It is actually going into each of the areas that your organisation has decided are the things that you're doing, because not every water company is going to realise every one of the benefits. They're going to make some decisions about, we're going to go down the track with that one and we're not going to do that one, and then look at the impact.
Just adding to that, we have been involved with, large scale mass rollouts in the electricity space with smart metering in Victoria, and also with the National Power of Choice initiative. So we've been involved in looking at the data. We've been looking at resources, whether they're field resources, internal resources, impact on call centres. So we have got some experience in terms of being able to extrapolate what that might be. The other thing too is that we often get involved in defining roles with regard to program initiatives. What new resources, or with the slide that Joe showed with the impact on meter faults, being able to define what responsibilities and accountabilities new roles are meant to be covering off. So we can help with some of those things as well. And hopefully that will provide a really good stepping stone for being able to quantify all your requirements in relation to the digital metering programs.
Wonderful. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you, David, Penny and Joe, for your time. It's been lovely to have you come present to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we log off?
Yes, you can log off now and we'll continue to talk all sorts of nonsense. So
thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Did you want me to keep recording, Jacinta?
what have we got? No, I think we can probably stop the recording there.